The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. Franklin D. Roosevelt. People build invisible walls around their own lives. In reality, the future is rarely locked by circumstances. It is often locked by the silent doubts in the mind. Doubt acts like a thin fog covering human vision. The path is still there, opportunities are still there, but the eyes no longer see clearly. When a person starts wondering, can I do it? That very question sows the seed of hesitation. And hesitation is the most cunning thief of time. Doubt is not entirely an enemy. It is like a warning bell reminding us to think carefully. But when that bell rings too long, it turns into chains binding the will. Many great dreams have died not because they were impossible, but because their owners stopped believing in themselves before even trying to take a step. A seed that always doubts whether the soil is warm enough will never dare to sprout. But life only begins when it accepts to reach upward, even without knowing what the sky above is like. The future is not a distant land waiting for us to explore. It is a map being drawn stroke by today's beliefs. Each positive thought is like a ray of sunlight shining into the garden of possibilities, making seemingly fragile ideas begin to grow strong. When people learn to replace doubt with action, instead of asking, can I do it? They ask, where will I start? Then the door to tomorrow immediately opens. What needs to be overcome is not the vast world out there, but the shadow created by our own minds. When faith is ignited, limits once thought immutable will melt away like ice under the sun. And at that moment, people realize a simple yet powerful truth. The future has never been locked tight. We just need to be brave enough to open its door. The only impossible journey is the one you never begin. Tony Robbins. Most failures in life do not arise from taking the wrong path, but from not daring to take the first step. In our minds, there often exists a foggy land called what if? What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What if the road ahead is too difficult? Those what ifs are like invisible threads, light enough to go unnoticed, but tight enough to keep the feet standing still. In reality, every great journey begins with a very small moment, a decision. Like a ship lying still in the harbor, it may be safe, not battered by waves and winds. But the ship was not born to stand still. It was created to set sail. If it never leaves the dock, the ocean will forever be just a deep blue dream on the horizon. People are the same. Talent, opportunities, and the future only truly come alive when we dare to step out of familiar procrastination. The fear of starting is often greater than the difficulties of the journey itself. The human brain likes safety, likes the familiar, so it often exaggerates risks to keep us in the same position. But the paradox is, when we start walking, the fear often fades like morning mist. The path only becomes clear when the feet begin to touch it. The future does not require perfection to begin, it only needs the first step. A small step today can open up a vast horizon tomorrow. And when people dare to set out, they often realize that the scariest thing is not failure along the way, but standing still too long before the door of life. In the end, every dream is a journey, and the only truly impossible journey is the one that was never begun. A sad soul can kill you quicker, far quicker than a germ. John Steinbeck. People often fear visible enemies like germs or diseases, but rarely realize that prolonged sadness in the soul can also silently erode life. If germs attack the body from the outside, then melancholy eats away at a person from the inside, bit by bit, like water drops wearing down a stone over time. Sadness is not simply a fleeting emotion. When it accumulates too long, it becomes a heavy atmosphere enveloping the mind, causing people to gradually lose their vitality. A person with a sad soul is like a garden lacking sunlight. The trees are still there, the soil is still there, but life is suppressed. Everything becomes withered. Hope, motivation, and even the ability to see the beauty of life gradually fade. The mind and body are not two separate worlds. They are linked like two sides of the same flow. When the soul sinks into darkness, the body also becomes weaker. Prolonged fatigue, heavy sleep, and a lack of vitality are signs that the inner self is being eroded. Therefore, caring for the soul is not a luxury, but an essential need for life. If sadness has such great power, then joy and hope carry no less strength. A soul warmed by meaning, by love and connection can revive a person like sunlight, bringing a garden back to life after a long winter. When we learn to nurture inner peace, we not only protect the mind but also safeguard our very life. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. People often seek joy in external circumstances, money, success, recognition. But in reality, those factors are only like light shining on a mirror. The quality of the mirror, that is, our thoughts, determines whether the reflected image is clear or distorted. Two people can stand before the same situation. One sees opportunity, the other only obstacles. The difference lies not in the world, but in how they think about the world. Thoughts are the silent stream nurturing the soul. If that stream is clear, positive, and full of hope, the soul becomes a lush garden where joy and meaning can sprout. But if thoughts are filled with negativity, envy, or pessimism, that garden will gradually become barren. Notably, most of these thoughts are created unconsciously each day, like seeds falling to the ground unnoticed. The quality of life is not only measured by what we possess, but by what we nurture in our minds. A person can live in simple circumstances yet feel rich if their thoughts are full of gratitude. Conversely, a person with all material possessions but a mind full of dissatisfaction will still feel lacking. The mind is like a colored lens. It tints every experience of life. People begin to understand that happiness does not entirely lie in changing the external world, but in training the internal one. When we learn to think more clearly, more positively, and more meaningfully, life seems to become lighter and brighter. And then we realize a simple yet powerful truth. Happiness is not something we wait for from life, but something created each day in our own thoughts. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. Steve Jobs. Much of our time is woven from labor, from diligent days with work. If work is only a burden, then life will be like a long journey walking under a gray sky. But when work becomes something we believe in and love, it is like a silent flame warming the soul, making each passing day meaningful. Love for work is not just an emotion, but a powerful source of energy, driving creativity and perseverance. When people do what they truly love, effort is no longer forced, it becomes a natural flow. A painter passionate about colors will not feel tired standing before the canvas for hours, just as a musician who loves sounds will forget time while seeking the perfect melody. Passion turns work from obligation into art. Conversely, if the heart is not present in what we do, work easily becomes a machine repeating day after day. People may complete tasks, but it's hard to reach excellence. Because greatness is not created only from skills, but from emotions and beliefs placed in every action. When we love our work, we are willing to go further, learn more, and persist longer. That is what creates great achievements. Don't just seek a job to survive. Find a job that makes your heart wake up every morning. When people find love in what they do, labor is no longer a burden of life, but a path for them to express themselves, create, and leave a... And then they realize that happiness does not lie in working less, but in doing what they love with all their soul. Instead of wondering when your next vacation is, maybe you should set up a life you don't need to escape from. Seth Godin. Many people are living like this. They wait for short vacations as an escape from daily life. It's like a tired swimmer in the ocean, only hoping to see a small island to rest, but never asking why their own ocean of life has become so burdensome. Constantly longing for vacations is often a sign of a life lacking harmony. When work, environment, or lifestyle makes us feel constrained, the mind starts seeking escape times. Trips, holidays, or weekend evenings become temporary medicine, like opening a window for a stuffy room. But if that room always lacks air, opening the window a few times cannot change its essence. It's not to deny the value of vacations, but to encourage people to redesign their lives from within. A life worth living is not a chain of days waiting to escape, but a flow where even ordinary days bring a sense of meaning. When work aligns with our values, when time is arranged with space for passion, family, and self-development, then each day can hold cherished moments. True happiness does not lie in temporarily leaving life, but in designing a life we want to stay in. When that happens, vacations are no longer an escape, but just a gentle pause in the journey. And then, people realize a simple but profound thing. The most beautiful life is not the one we always want to leave, but the one that makes us want to wake up and continue living it every day. The trouble with the rat race is that, even if you win, you're still a rat. Tomlin. In that rat race, everyone runs non-stop, running to achieve higher positions, more money, more recognition. But the paradox is that when the race ends and one stands at the top, they may realize that the nature of the game remains unchanged. Victory only helps them stand at the head in a system that already forces everyone to run endlessly. The rat race reflects a state of living based on comparison and pressure. People no longer ask what truly matters to me, but only how to be faster than others. This is like animals running in a spinning wheel, constant motion but no real progress. Each small success brings brief joy, but right after is a new goal, a new rival, a new pressure. Life gradually turns into an endless escalation. Perhaps the problem is not whether we run fast or slow, but which race we are running in. A person can spend a lifetime winning by society's standards, but still feel empty if that victory is not tied to their true values. Because deep satisfaction does not come from surpassing others, but from understanding clearly where we want to go. When a person stops, looks outside the circle of the race, they begin to realize that life does not have to be a constant competition. There are paths that don't require running, just walking. There are achievements that don't need comparison, just feeling. And when people dare to leave the rat race, they are no longer defined by their position in the race. They begin to live as themselves instead of as an athlete in someone else's game. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. Charles Darwin. We often admire strength or intelligence as decisive factors for success, but the history of life tells a different story. In the harsh flow of time, the creatures that endure are not always the strongest, but the most flexible. Those beings that know how to change form, habits, and ways of existence to harmonize with an ever-changing environment. The ability to adapt is like an art of living. Life is not a fixed wall, but like a river, constantly changing direction. Those who try to stand still in the flow are often swept away by the current, while those who know how to adjust their steps, change their steering, can go further. Adapting does not mean abandoning oneself, but the flexibility of intellect and spirit, knowing when to persist, when to change direction, when to learn something new. People often fear change because it takes them out of their familiar comfort zone. But that very fear makes them rigid, like a dry branch easily broken when strong winds blow. In contrast, a supple bamboo branch can bend with the wind and then stand straight again after the storm. True strength sometimes lies not in rigidity, but in flexibility. It is not just an observation about nature, but a profound lesson for human life. In a world always in motion, life does not reward those who rely only on existing strength or intelligence. It favors minds that know how to learn, people who dare to change, and spirits flexible enough to adapt to new circumstances. And when we understand that, we realize that the key to survival and growth is not resisting change, but learning to dance with it. If a man loses a leg or an eye, he knows he has lost a leg or an eye. But if he loses the self which is himself, he cannot know it, because he is no longer there to know it. Oliver Sacks. Physical losses are always clear. The body sends pain signals, the mirror reflects the deficiency, and people know what they have lost. But the loss of self happens much more silently, like a lamp gradually dimming in a room without anyone noticing the light weakening. Losing oneself does not mean disappearing from the world, but losing awareness of one's true self. When a person lives too long according to others' expectations, chases borrowed values, or sinks into unconscious habits, they may gradually drift away from their inner center. On the surface, they still speak, still work, still laugh, but inside, the true I has been covered by layers of masks from roles and duties. Like an actor who becomes so immersed in the role that they forget who they were before stepping on stage. The irony is that when people lose themselves, they rarely realize it. Because to recognize that loss, there needs to be an observer within a deep enough awareness to look into oneself. But when the self has been dissolved in the flow of habits, society, fears, that observer also gradually falls silent. People still exist biologically, but live like a shadow of themselves. The greatest loss in life is not when the body is injured, but when we lose our presence in our own life. When people forget what they truly think, want, and believe in, they can live many years without truly living. Preserving the self is not a grand action, but a continuous awareness. It is the ability to pause amid the hurried pace of life, to listen to the inner self, to remember that behind every role and title, there still exists a true person. And when we can still recognize ourselves in every thought, every choice, the inner light still shines and we are truly present in our own life. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Henry Ford. Thoughts do not just reflect reality, but also silently shape it. In the inner world, belief is like an invisible compass. If that compass points to I can't, every subsequent step becomes sluggish, cautious, and ultimately people really stop before reaching the destination. But when the needle points to I can, the mind begins to seek paths, like a traveler in the desert who continues walking because they believe there is an oasis ahead. Thoughts create a form of self-fulfilling prophecy. When a person believes they lack ability, they will avoid challenges, fear mistakes, and give up early. The final result seems to confirm the initial belief: they truly fail. But that is not because they lack ability, but because the mind built a wall before they could step through the door. Conversely, those who believe they can will persist more, try again more times, and that very process opens opportunities for success. Belief in the mind is like a seed sown in the soil. If the seed is doubt, the tree that grows will be weak and easily withered. But if the seed is belief, it will nurture courage, patience, and spiritual endurance. The wonder is that the external world often mirrors exactly what we sow in our minds. People cannot control every circumstance, but they can choose how to perceive their own abilities. And that very choice is like opening or closing the door to the future. When a person dares to believe they can, they have taken the first step on the path to turning the impossible into possible.